for Schindler. Has a chance to write his name in Huddersfield Town legend. And he takes that chance!
Hello and welcome to another pint-sized preview sponsored by Magic Rock. On this one, we're looking at Sunderland, the Mackems, the Black Cats. They finally got out of League One, so the pressure is now off. Or does it get ramped up to another level? Let's find out. We spoke to Michael from the Roker Report ahead of the season, and here's what he had to say.
Hello, it's Martin Wanless here from the Sunderland podcast Roker Report. And as you can imagine, after coming back up through the playoffs following 4 seasons in League One, I am very much looking forward to the new season. I think that goes for most other Sunderland supporters as well. We've sold more than 30,000 season cards, and there's a bit of a feel-good factor around the club again, which is quite long overdue. I think David Moyes sucked out that feel-good factor of 5 years ago. Obviously, we've come back up, and I'm not too sure what to expect in the Championship. I think on one hand, we've got a good team, especially in attack, and we have got a really good manager. But on the other hand, we didn't come up automatically. We need the playoffs to get promoted. And I'm under no illusions about the strength of the Championship. It's a big step up. And in reality, I'd be pretty content with a relatively steady season around mid-table and re-establishing ourselves back into the second tier. As I've just mentioned, we have got some good players in attack, particularly in attack. And if they're fit and firing on all cylinders, we are capable of scoring a lot of goals, which does give me a bit of confidence heading into the new season. One of those players who we relied heavily on last season to score goals was Ross Stewart. He was absolutely on fire for us last year. We picked him up for a bargain fee from Scotland, and we were so lucky that he did not get injured last season. We didn't miss a game. I think he played in all 46 league games. I think he played over 50 games in all competitions, and he'd struggled in his first season. He joined us the previous January, and he struggled with hamstring injury. So we were kind of counting our blessings, really, that he didn't pick up an injury. And it's even more imperative that we keep him fit, because at the present moment in time, he is literally the only striker we have. Nathan Broadhead played on loan last season from Everton for us. He did fantastically well as well, but he's still back at Everton. So we really need to strengthen that area of the field. And also with Stewart, a bit of a concern, as well as the potential for injury, is that he is out of contract at the end of this coming season. I believe there's been a contract offer on the table for him all summer. That hasn't been signed. And I do have a little nagging concern that if we got an offer in for him over the summer and it was a good offer and his contract wasn't signed, they might be tempted to cash in on him. So that's a little bit of a concern at the minute. At the other end of the field, our goalkeeper, Anthony Patterson, has come up through the academy, and he got into the first team around January. He'd had a spell on loan at Notts County in the National League, and he only got into the team because our 2 first choice keepers, our 2 senior keepers, picked up COVID and were out of action for a little while. He had a bit of a shaky start, but he did fantastically well throughout the sort of back end of the season. He improved dramatically game on game. But I do have a concern with him as well in terms of his ability and his readiness, I guess, to play Championship football for a full season. I'd be really, really surprised if we don't sign an experienced keeper to at least challenge him. But at present, he's our only senior keeper, and he's only got half a season's experience. So that, again, that's a little bit of a concern there. But I think in terms of the team that we've got and players that we've got and signings that we've made, which I'll come on to shortly, I do think we've actually got a pretty good setup. I think the biggest positive that we've got, though, is Alex Neil, our manager. He came in February after Lee Johnson was sacked. And Alex Neil did so well in the second half of last season. He came in, he organised the defence. He solved problems that, as fans, you kind of think are fairly obvious to anybody watching it. But we just needed to get a little bit more solid at the back. We needed to stop overcommitting going forward. And he really, it took him a couple of games and he got us absolutely spot on, sorted out. And he showed a real flexibility in terms of tactics and approach and style of play, even going from game to game to game. So there was some games that we set up with a back four and we were really attacking. Other games we had a five and we were a little bit more pragmatic. And he really sort of looked at each game as a different challenge and found a way to win it. And as a personality, look, he's a sort of manager as well who typically does well at Sunderland. He's no nonsense. He tells us how it is. He doesn't fluff around. There's no bullshit. He really just talks talk, and he doesn't let. There's this perceived pressure at Sunderland, which isn't actually there. I think a lot of people make far too much out of it. As fans, we turn up to games, we watch games, and we want a good performance from the team. We want the team to put everything into it, but that's it. We don't expect to turn teams over 5 or 6-0 every week, but we expect the players to give everything. And I think, in all reality, that's exactly the same for every other football fan. But there's this perceived pressure at Sunderland, and Alex Neil has not bought into that at all, and he's been superb. And he's done some pretty good business in the transfer market this summer as well. We've got a recruitment model that I think is really looking at bringing players in who are young players from the verge of Premier League teams, but are maybe 4th, 5th, 6th choice down the list and aren't going to get any first team action at the Premier League clubs. We signed a lad from Spurs last season, Dennis Sirkin, young left back. He played his first full season last year, and he was great. Progressed. He, as every young player has, he had little dips in form, which you've kind of got to accept with that sort of model. But we followed that through this summer as well. We've got the lad Daniel Ballard from Arsenal, who's come in. He had a season on loan at Millwall last year and did pretty well by all accounts. And we also signed another centre half from West Ham, Aji Elise, left-footed centre half, really pacey, mobile, and he looks like a good prospect as well. West Ham fans seem to be pretty disappointed that they'd let him go, which is a good sign, I always think. Jack Clark has signed permanently from Spurs, and I think there's a big fee attached to his transfer, though that's undisclosed, as many fees are nowadays. But Clark had a few months on loan with us at the end of last season, arrived in January. He took a little while to get up to speed. He hadn't played much first team football, but once he got up to speed, he was effective, and he's got a lot of potential. He was a bit raw, but he could take players on, he could score goals, and I think in the long term, or the medium to long term, really, he's going to be a good signing for us. As well as Clark coming in, who we signed on loan in January. Patrick Roberts joined the club on a short-term contract in January. And again, similar story to Clark. Once he got his fitness up, he was absolutely cracking. And we've managed to sign him on a permanent long-term contract as well. And Patrick Roberts is a lovely player to watch. He's skillful, he's quick, he can score goals, he can go inside, go outside. And I think he could be one of our most effective players in the coming season. I think he's more than capable of playing championship football. And he can be really integral to what we do, certainly in the final third of the pitch. He's going to be important. I think Clark's going to be important. Ross Stewart's going to be important. And I know there's another player who you will not want to hear about, but Alex Pritchard is going to be crucial for us. He joined us, as you know, in the summer of last year. And, once he got up to speed, he arrived with COVID, had an injury, but I think probably at the end of September, he got his fitness, got into the team, and he was absolutely critical for us last season. He was, he's probably the best technical player in the league. He was our heartbeat for the vast majority of games throughout the course of the season. He scored goals, he created things, and surprisingly, he was really getting stuck in, chasing back, tackling, and he actually dragged us through some difficult spells in games last season. He showed some real leadership qualities, and I'm looking forward to seeing how he does in the championship. And I think if he shows what he did last season with playing behind Ross Stewart, Roberts on one side, Clark on the other, I think we've got a really nice forward line there that can cause championship teams problems. Having said all that, we've got some strengthening still to do. I would expect us to bring in 3 or 4 more players, and I think it is going to be a difficult season. I'm not kidding myself that we we're going to do anything significant next season. Obviously, I'd be delighted if we did, but as I said at the beginning of this, if we can finish a comfortable mid-table and not get involved in anything down the bottom third, I'll be really happy. I'll be really content with that for the season. So I will stick my neck on the line and say we will finish in the top 10, but 10th. And again, I will be pretty damn happy with that come May if that is the case. All the best for the season. Cheers, lads.
Okay, thanks for that, Michael. Sunderland finally back in the Championship. Tricky one to predict, but what I would say is I think Alex Neil is a really good coach. I think that was a smart appointment, particularly after streaky Lee Johnson. It's kind of hard to predict newly promoted teams, but I think with him in charge, I think they'll be fine. To be honest, they've signed Dan Ballard, who was on loan at Millwall last season. I think he's a really good young defender. Jack Clark, they've gotten a permanent. When I've seen him in this league, obviously there was a lot of promise when he was at Leeds, although he didn't play that much and then went to Spurs. And when he's been on loan in the Championship, he's not really convinced me, but he performed pretty well from all accounts at League One last season. So interesting to see if he can make the step up. I think they'll be fine, really, to be honest. I'm sure their business isn't done either. So we will see. Be interesting to see what Premier League loans they're getting as well, if they get any. So, Dave, what about you? What are your thoughts on Sunderland?
I think a few people are getting carried away with Sunderland. I think fourth bottom would represent a good season for them. They need to remember that. I think Alex Neil, as you said, is a good manager. I think they've got more than enough to pull themselves over the line and stay in the league. But they need to just be slightly careful because, as I said, they need to. It's a long season, the Championship, and it's a tough league. And I think adrenaline is probably going to carry them through the first month, but then the grind kicks in, and it's have they got the will to keep going? My gut feeling is I think they'll stay up. But yeah, I think they need to understand that fourth bottom would be absolutely fine for them this season.
Tom, you were doing a lot of nodding. Are you in agreement with Mr. Hartrick there?
Yeah, I think staying up would be a good season for them. Bottom half, good finish. If I was a Sunderland fan, I'd be happy with that first season back in the Championship. Jack Clark, an interesting one. Yeah, they seem to like him last season, but I don't know. 10 million for him sound. Like you said, Brady, he's not pulled up trees in the Championship, so I feel like that's quite a hefty price tag for him. Obviously Spurs wanted to get rid, but 10 million does sound a lot. You never know though. Maybe we'll kindle some at this year. But yeah, let's say bottom half finish for me.
Matt, do you disagree? Do you think they could improve on a bottom half finish, or have you got them pegged around there as well?
No, I slightly disagree, but I just feel like everything about Sunderland just feels steady now. After a couple of really ropey years, I think they've got a steady manager. I think Alex Neil's decent at this level. Steady ownership at last, good fan base, good commercial revenue. I think they're on the way back, but not at warp speed. And I think that's what Dave alluded to as well, is that the expectation from Sunderland fans is, maybe they're going to, get the feet under the table for a few months and have an assault on the top six. I love the name of the Loch Ness Drogba. I think that's brilliant, the striker. How he does is going to be interesting. I think he's fairly decent. I think if he gets chances, he'll score. I agree with Tom. I think if 10 million is true, they've hugely overpaid, I think, for Jack Clark. Although, by all accounts, he did pretty well there last year. So, maybe he's worth it to Sunderland. But I think the building blocks are in place. I think there was a lot of pressure on them in League One to get out quickly. And I think the pressure really got to a lot of them. And I think some of that will be lifted now. So I think with that pressure valve released, I think Sunderland will be okay. I don't think they'll be top half, but I think they'll be fine this year. And I think that's okay for Sunderland. I think, like Dave says, they've got to understand that that's okay. And then, continue to add to what they've got and then, build towards the top six in coming years. But, this season's too soon.
Just on the Jack Clark thing, the one thing I would say is 10 million is too much money, but he was worth 10 million to Sunderland because they shaped so much of what they did last season in attack around him that if someone else had bought him, that would be way too much money. But to Sunderland, for what he gives them, it's probably about right in truth in terms of importance.
Fair enough. There you go. So Sunderland fans, don't worry, we've all predicted you to stay up this season. So what are you worrying about? That's our predictions are good as gold. So thanks for tuning in.